We are back with another Pink Culture Presents, and tonight, or this evening rather, we are at 2850 by night. And I have got a hunk from Hull today. You may recognise him from Love Island. But he is now a mental health and exercise coach, training people in mental health and exercise and helping them combine the two for a better life. Welcome, Danny. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm really good, thank you.
No worries. It's been a while.
It's been too long, I'd say.
So I'm going to start you off with a cocktail. So our sponsors are a company called Niche Cocktails, and they are the best pre-mixed cocktails. What is your normal? I know you don't drink at the moment, but what's your normal go-to cocktail?
My number one cocktail is a Negroni. So
what?
A Negroni.
Oh, Negroni.
Yeah, I like classic cocktails. I like strong cocktails, typically.
Negroni is very bitter, isn't it?
It is, but I think there's just something about when you have the first drink and it's like it's got a bit of a...
hits the spot.
Yeah. Maybe this is why I don't drink anymore.
But, is that a permanent fixture, or...?
I'm just seeing how it goes. It's been 3 months, and I'm probably going to see the rest of the year out, I think, and just reevaluate at the end of the year. Just seeing if I see any differences, really, from like a curiosity perspective.
I think you definitely will. V-Way, would you like a cocktail?
I don't mind if I do.
Will you give him a cameo?
See, the problem is with pre-mixed cocktails, for me, is that they taste too good.
Like nothing
and they're too
alcoholic was.
And you can be sipping on them as if it's just juice, and actually 3 or 4 in and you're a bit... This
is the problem. This is it. Well, it's not really a problem.
I can concur.
That's a really good place to start, though. So you're doing this no drinking thing now. I did it for 75 days for mental health reasons, and a lot of people will know you obviously from Love Island. Post show, how was that? Because obviously you effectively go from a normal life into something quite great, and your season was, I mean, it was the OG. It was the one that really popped off, and people knew all of you. How was post Love Island life?
You're right. It blew up, right?
Yeah.
And I think my life before that was the other end of the spectrum. I was very far removed from this lifestyle.
Really?
Coming from a council estate in Hull, I never had any aspirations of TV or anything like that. It was just, like I said, the other end of the spectrum, really. So coming out of it, I didn't have any of the skills, tools, resources, connections to really navigate this world.
Just thrown in.
You're just kind of thrown in. And the analogy I use quite a lot is it's like being put in a washing machine on a fast spin, and then you just kind of get dropped out on the kitchen floor, and you have to find your feet, and you're dizzy, and you don't know what to do. There's so many opportunities and things to pull from it, which I'm so grateful for, but at the same time there is downside too, and I think navigating that for the first 12 to 18 months was really challenging. But fast forward now and I'm doing something I absolutely love, and I don't know if I'd be here if it wasn't for that experience. So ultimately it's gratitude over resentment and things like that.
Which is a really positive mindset to have, particularly I mean, you see it can go either way. It's such anyone who comes out of that show, you have sort of 5,000 followers maybe, and then you're at 2 million. So you've got the whole world casting their opinions. They've watched you for what? How long is it?
I think it runs for 6 or 7 weeks. And
is that it? It feels like
maybe it's like the length of a British summer, I guess. It's like 6 or 7 weeks.
3 days, 4 days.
And I think what a lot of people forget is in every season there's sort of between 30 and 40 contestants, and we're on season 10 now.
Is it really that many?
Yeah, there's a lot of people go on the show, and
wow.
We're in I think it's the 10th season now, so there's like 300 to 400 people have done this show now.
Bloody hell.
And
and they're all basically mini celebrities, influencers.
Yeah, mini celebrities, influencers, and I don't know the statistics, but of how many of those 300 to 400 people are now so much better in life than they were before the show. It's quite a difficult thing to navigate.
An interesting one to look into, because you just don't know. Instagram does not paint the full picture.
For sure. There's definitely this presumption that it changes everybody's life for the better, and you become an overnight success, an overnight millionaire, and there's not really much to navigate, and it's just plain sailing. And especially for the first few months, I was like, whoa, what do I do?
I was going to say,
what's the plan? What's the mission here? How do we make this work? And that's a part of the journey that I've really tried to shine some light on, particularly recently, is that it's not just plain sailing, and there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
Absolutely. So what was this sort of say? I mean, you moved in did you move in straight away with Mac and all of that, or was that, because you were quite close on the show?
Yeah, so we was really close on the show, and we all became really good friends, and it wasn't for about a year until after the show finished that I moved in with them, and we moved into that big house in Essex.
The content house.
We did MTV, Living the Dream and all that kind of stuff. But it was about a year before that all happened. Obviously, we was in lockdown first, and then we moved in together during lockdown, and we started filming the show literally ourselves with like handheld cameras, and the TV crew couldn't even come in the house because it was still that restrictive.
Was it that? Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that.
So it was kind of not the most ideal time to like move in with your best friend and start filming a TV show. But we made it work, and it was so much fun.
And what was it called? So this was on MTV?
This was MTV, and it was called Living the Dream, which is a bit kind of cringy when I say it out loud now.
Hey, this season has been lit. Living together has definitely kept us on our toes.
But it was one hell of a, as you were saying to me earlier, you really just had a blast with your mates.
You know what, and I shouldn't cringe really, because when I look back retrospectively, it really was living the dream. Like, I was living with my best friends, filming ourselves, just joke around and have fun and travel and do loads of cool stuff.
Sounds great.
Yeah, like, not being funny, it was quite literally the dream. It was really, really fun. And I think we didn't quite recognise how lucky we were to do it at the time, but now we look back, it's like, oh wow, that was really a really cool gig.
A real bitch, isn't it? Because you're like, damn, I wish I cherished that a bit more.
It can be quite humbling, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And so that's all happened, and when I started following you, you're very into your personal training, but it's taken a lean towards mental health.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
I think there's a couple of moments which I think led me into this direction of mental health. I think the first one, as a prerequisite really, was my own personal experience. I've probably exercised for going on 10, 12 years now.
Guns.
Whether that be sport, whether it be the gym, whatever. And I think post Love Island, I consciously realised that for the vast majority of that period of time, I actually had an unhealthy relationship with exercise and with food to some extent as well.
Really?
Particularly when I was a model and worked in the fashion industry, I used to work out just to try and carve my physique to look a certain way, to fit into a certain box, to be approved by other people that wasn't myself. And that was really how my gym journey started. And it's how a lot of people's gym journey starts. It's, I want to change the way I look because I'm insecure in some capacity. And that's not always a bad thing, but I was trying to be a personal trainer and help people. And my values are really quite entrenched in this mindset of, if I look better, I'll feel better. And I've come to learn that that's not always the case, because I looked really great at one point, really, really lean, and all the desirable.
Still do, my friend.
Thank you very much. I was at a point where on the surface, I was a model, I worked for really big brands, even fitness brands, the London Fashion Week, and this was at a point in my life when I felt the worst about how I looked.
Really,
and I was like, how can I be a personal trainer and help people on their health and fitness journeys? I'm selling them plans to say that if you look like this, you will be successful,
you'll feel
happy,
brilliant.
you'll feel great.
Absolutely.
If I myself didn't do that, I didn't have that experience. I couldn't.
It's really good introspection to see that, because I think it's. I was saying to you earlier, deferred reality is the phrase I learned today. Which is where it's exactly this. It's, well, I'm working towards this. When I reach that physique, I'm going to be happy. When I reach this, I'm going to be happy. And it's bollocks. It never happens. It's, you've got to find a way to become happy that's not always in the distance. So I think that was really interesting. And how did you come or have you come out of that? When did that change for you?
Yeah, for sure. I think a massive thing for me was recognizing that, or trying to shift some of the emphasis away from the outcome and putting it more on the day-to-day process and on the journey. I think we see in the fitness space particularly, it's like you said, the deferred reality of, I will be happy when, I will feel better about my circumstance when, if I just change X, Y, Z, then I will allow myself to be
It's always in the future, isn't it?
It's never in the here and now. And if we can try and shift that conversation to like, I might not be where I want to be yet, but wow, I'm working towards something, which is really, really cool.
100%.
Let's pick up small wins in the day by days and the week by weeks, and we can be happy now. Why are we denying ourselves the opportunity to experience the positivity? And for my own personal experience, it was when I qualified as the PT, there was a bit of a disconnect, a bit of a dissonance between my values and what I really truly believed as a coach, and then what I was seeing on the gym floor and in the industry myself. And it was quite eye-opening to really step into the industry with all these ambitions and hopes, and to kind of be, I don't want to say shocked, but to recognize the reality of the industry. It's hyper-focused on body image. It's not always positive. It's almost predominantly negative, I would say. And the people at the top who are running the industry, who are the most idolized on the highest pedestals, I don't think enough of them are shouting this message personally. And it's often perpetuated by the brands that we love and wear, the Nikes and the Gymsharks and all this kind of stuff. I think more needs to be done. And I think for me, I'm just trying to do my bit in terms of turning the tide, really.
Yeah, and you can see it in what you're doing now, which I'll go back to. But I think the thing I wanted to zone in on there is exactly that. It's this culture. I don't know if you remember Ziz and all of that. It was very much basically an arsehole with a fantastic physique, with sort of preaching almost misogynistic values, and this whole generation of guys who just wanted to get as shredded as possible, who probably jumped on juice, and they lived these really unhealthy lives and are not really that happy. That was sort of the first 5 years of training for me, and that's all the inspiration really that was around. And it's nice to see a shift, particularly if you look at Ben Francis and what he's doing with Gymshark. It's all about inclusivity, but also the fact that, I don't know how you would describe it, but fitting into a more, I guess, inclusive vibe.
Making fitness accessible for everybody, right? Which is what it should be. The fitness industry was born out of bodybuilding, which is such a niche sport for such a niche mindset of individual. Traditionally bodybuilders aren't necessarily the healthiest of people in a holistic sense.
I don't think they are by a long way.
And that's what the fitness industry's foundations were built from.
Absolutely.
And luckily it's exploded, and now we've got people like Ben Francis doing great things with Gymshark, and the tide is turning.
Yes.
And you're starting to see a real shift. But I think for a long period of time, and we're still experiencing it to some degree, the fitness industry is quite closed-minded. It's quite discriminative.
Yeah.
It's quite, you're not welcome here unless you look like this, or unless you train like this, unless you have these aspirations. And where I'm coming from, and I think now where people like Ben Francis are coming from, is saying, look, fitness looks different to everybody.
Yes.
But everybody's welcome.
Everyone should be included.
Everyone is welcome.
Absolutely.
I don't care whether you're disabled, whether you're overweight, whether you're underweight, whether you're recovering from something.
100%.
Health and fitness is something we can all get involved in.
It's so true. I think it's almost quite strange looking back at the fact that you would, well, not me personally, but people take the piss out of other people in the gym trying to get in shape, and you're like, well, they're in the gym trying to get to this, so why would you take the... Very strange, but there's definitely been a shift, and something I can resonate with quite. From my personal experience, you would go to a new gym in London, and there's like Barry's, there's Metabolic, Recognize, my favourite gym. You've got the One Rebels and things like this, and I don't think it's possible, unless you're someone who goes from bouncing from gym to gym, to walk into that environment and not feel a little bit intimidated, because you've got people who all know each other. It's like a community. But the reality is, when you actually go in, it's so welcoming nowadays. Everyone's just like, come and get involved. And from the other side, I feel it's also really nice when you see new people, like, no, come on, get involved.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel the tide's turning.
I completely agree, and it's something I say to clients quite a lot when we speak about gym anxiety. But one of the biggest reasons why people get anxious about going to the gym is fear of judgment and fear of looking like they don't know what they're doing, and feeling out of place as a byproduct of that. And what I always say to them is, look, it doesn't matter what somebody looks like in the gym, everybody fundamentally is there for the same reason, which is to be better today than they was yesterday.
100%.
And if you just like let go of all the body image, and if people are more of an expert than you, or if people look better than you, they still think that they can be better in some capacity. That's why they're there. 100%. And that's why you're there. So you're all there for the same reason. And now we're starting to see people connect and intertwine in that kind of space, and I think it's really great to see.
Absolutely. I think you see it in pretty much every gym in London now. People are just
on the money.
Yes. Anyway, does this? He chats in.
It's that cocktail kicking, isn't it?
To be fair,
I'm loving this chat.
The anxiety thing's a really interesting one, because in fact, Viwo and I were chatting. V started a big health kick, getting shredded, and you can something he experienced and I've experienced is that anxiety of going to these classes where people are just, particularly metabolic, these people are insanely in insanely good shape. And one of the things you find is that anxiety will stop you going.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I'm too busy dying on the metabolic workout to focus on you looking a bit weird doing your exercise. And that is the majority of the time. Majority of these classes is everyone is so focused on being better and doing what they're doing that you ain't going to notice that person over there who might be running a little bit slower. Honestly, it's people are completely focused on what they're doing, and we are also selfish creatures. So you're not going to be worried about what other people are doing. So it works out beautifully.
And also, we're not as important as what we think we are. So we walk into a room and we assume everyone's looking at us. We assume everyone has gone, who's
never
that just
the
racing.
That's so true.
Oh, look at his gym outfit. Look at his trainers. He's not in shape. And actually,
His calves are skinny. That's
you
my
walk
number
in,
one.
you're probably going to walk into a gym class, and they might give you a quick glance, and it's back to their life and their problems. Because
That's
we think about ourselves.
so true.
And we're so hyper-focused on our own stuff that the odds of everyone thinking something about you who's just walked in are very, very slim.
It's wild, isn't it?
Realistically.
Yeah,
we get in our own heads, don't we?
I saw a TikTok the other day about that exactly. It's effectively no one cares about you in a sort of in that scale. Obviously your family do, but in a gym class, no one really cares. But something I'll move on to is you were saying about anxiety there. Now you are I'm going to get this wrong again. What was the role?
Mental health
performance coach. Yeah. How did that come about? Because I think teaming together the two is, I think, one of the best things I've heard.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate enough to, when I qualified as a PT, first and foremost, I didn't start working as a PT straight away.
Right.
It was something that I had in my back pocket, which I thought I'm going to go to that one day when I'm ready to start pursuing that as a career choice.
Okay.
I was very much, engulfed in this media space and social media, TV, all that kind of stuff. And actually, after about 12 months of being in that world, I felt myself being pulled back to fitness because that's what I always wanted to do, irrespective of this reality TV journey that I've taken. And I ended up going back to PT and thinking I want to do this sooner rather than later. And when I qualified as a PT, I was like, right, I want to work online one day, but in the interim, I feel like I almost need to earn my stripes as a PT and work on the gym floor with actual real people before I start trying to launch an online business and leverage this audience that I've got and all the things that everyone else is telling me I should do. You've got a big audience, build an online business, and I'm like, right, that's great, maybe one day, but right now I need to earn my stripes.
That's really refreshing to hear that.
Thank you. And so I spent the following 12 months really focusing on just being on the gym floor, doing the day-to-day of being a personal trainer, getting to know people on a personal level before I even think about building an online business. And in that period of time, when I was looking at building my app with an external company, I was introduced to two guys who are now really good friends of mine who had just launched an additional qualification in mental health and exercise coaching.
Oh, amazing.
And it was the first course of its kind, which I think is ridiculous because as a PT,
it's crazy to think about that, isn't it?
It should just be like a prerequisite for anyone who wants to work with people on health. You should be able to know about mental health.
Yeah.
Anyway, separate conversation.
The most important one.
Anyway, so I've gone and done this course, and given that I was a very new PT, I think it's a blessing because I didn't have these set in stone values, but a lot of PTs do have. A lot of people have been coaching for years, even decades, and because what they do works, they see no reason for change. But because I was this blank canvas, if you like, and very early on in my career, I did this course, and it really opened my eyes up to like, wow, mental health is this massively overlooked subject, and at the minute the industry sees it as almost this like niche subject, almost like you qualify as a PT, then you might specialize in strength and conditioning, or you might qualify in separate, some kind of separate CPD or something like that, right? And I think mental health is almost seen in that bracket, but for me I really see it as you have your physical health, you have your mental health, that makes up your overall health.
That's 100% there, right?
Yeah, there's two, they're equally as important, and they're both very much intertwined as well. And I felt like, wow, this is something, if I don't know about this stuff, how can I really help people that I'm trying to help? And there's a big gap there. I might be able to help people get in shape, but they might not be healthier when they leave my program. And for me, it was like, if I want to really, really help people transform, that's a word that's thrown around a lot in the fitness industry, is transform and transformation. I might be able to get somebody from A to B in terms of their physique, but if mentally they've gone nowhere, then have I really helped them? And
it's really interesting,
so when I did the course, I now tutor for that course, so I help deliver the course to other PTs and health professionals. If anything, as a side project to help me get better at public speaking and things like that, because it's something I really struggled with before. So I do that, which is really, really fun and really rewarding. And then when I started using the skills which I learned from this qualification in my practically in my day-to-day life, I was like, I saw results straight away. It wasn't like with the odd client who needs a bit of extra help. It was like every single client can benefit from these skills that I've now got.
That's amazing.
And people who aren't necessarily struggling, it's not a case of like, oh, for your clients who struggle with mental health, they need mental health support. It's like people who are just, every single person can help, can have value from this.
Absolutely.
And so once I kind of crossed that threshold, there was no going back.
That's amazing. I think I think helping that kind of capacity really is the most fulfilling thing. And it's interesting you say about how it really, it transforms people. But everyone, because my sister suffered with bulimia and anorexia. She was subjected to a sort of awful school time, which really tweaked it. And obviously, it's fine. One of the things which I remember clearly is when you first approach a mental health issue or someone with mental health, if you're not equipped to deal with it, you just don't know what's going on in their head, and it can get very frustrating. So, say someone with bulimia, you'll be like, well, just eat or stop doing what you're doing. Obviously not that simple. And I read a book by a psychologist, which I'm going to link somewhere, and it was 6 different principles of what he's found to be causing mental health issues like depression. And the first was no light. You're not getting light. And if you think about someone who's depressed, they're normally in their room, curtains closed, no movement, so not exercising, omega-3s, so you're not eating the salmon, your leafy greens, things like that, because you're not really eating. I'm going to miss out if you want to. There are a few others, and these 6 things I applied bit by bit to my little sister, and the transformation in 2 weeks was something that beats what the NHS have been trying to do with her and things like that. And you're like,
it's a magic pill that will solve everything,
right? And I'm just thinking that for you, it's like, what the hell are people not doing more about this? Because you look at exercise being such a pivotal thing. Ice baths raising dopamine by 2.5 times for sort of 18 hours after. Don't quote me on that, Andrew Huberman. Then doing the saunas and things like this. All of these things help the brain become better, and you see them alongside exercise, and it's so that's what do you see?
I think for me it's like it's important first that we highlight that there's a difference between poor mental health and mental illness. And for people with a mental illness, I don't want to say I need to stay clear of, but their prescriptions are different, and they might need medical intervention from healthcare professionals. Yeah. But for me, I think everybody experiences poor mental health at some point in their life. Everybody will.
Everyone.
You'll deal with grief, you'll deal with loss, you might lose your job, you might get dumped by a girlfriend or something like that, and you're going to experience circumstantially poor mental health. And in those situations, you will absolutely get benefit from this holistic health approaches.
Absolutely.
Things like, exercise, movement, sunlight, nutrition, ice baths, things like that.
Nutrition. Yeah.
You're absolutely going to get a benefit from those things, and it's the most overlooked form of treatment.
Which is wild.
It can be preventative, and it can be a treatment. And instead of looking to these things which we can get right here, right now, going for a walk, sunlight, water, the things which we preach, right?
Yeah.
We look for a magic pill, or we look to the NHS, or we look for someone on YouTube to help us. And I'm not saying that's the only help out there, but the one which is at our fingertips at any given moment is the one we're overlooking the most.
Yeah.
And for people who are just in that kind of circumstantially poor mental health period, if I can describe that a bit better. There's so much at our fingertips that we're not reaching out.
So what kind of stuff have you been finding, which has been describe to me typically what kind of stuff you're working on clients with, or is that a trade secret?
It's not a trade secret, and it's much more simple than you might think. It's
I
not
have
like
a feeling it might be.
I'm not like some guru with these magic mental health secrets. It's a case of stripping back, simplifying. What I like to do with clients at the start of anyone's journey is audit their lifestyle, have a look at their values and traits and characteristics, what's currently serving them, what isn't serving them.
Highlights a lot more than they'd realise.
A lot of people think they have certain values, and they live by different values. And I think just that lack of alignment is what causes a lot of poor mental health. People think they stand for X, but they live by Y.
Interesting, yeah, absolutely.
And just by being, without realising, inauthentic, leads to them feeling they're wearing a mask without realising, and that leads to mental health. You're scared of getting caught out by people, and it's like, oh wow.
That is, I think you've just nailed on the...
In week 1, it's like, oh...
Hammer on the nail.
Yeah, in week 1, it's like, oh my God, I didn't realise I actually love this, and I've not done it in 10 years. And actually, I don't like hanging around with people like this, but my friendship group's full of them kind of people. And it's like, well, maybe that's why you've got anxiety. I don't know, just throwing it out there.
No, I think you've myself and Viwa have chatted about this so much.
We've had this chat so many times.
It's like a facade. It's like you're doing things, going out and doing things, spending money to do so, to impress people you don't like. And it's like, it's a bizarre fallacy. And I saw something you had posted on your wall actually, which really was a good analogy. And it was about, I'm going to get this wrong again, aren't I? What is wrong with me in quotes? But you used an analogy for why people, they don't seem to look at their mental health. What is it? Was it the washing machine one you've said? It's about buying a sports car, and you wouldn't just take that sports car for a shitty car wash. You would look after it and you would treat it well. And it's the same with us. Why do we just dismiss the fact that we have one of these? You have one brain, you have one life. What on earth are you fucking it up for?
Yeah, we massively take it for granted, don't we? You know, and I understand why that happens, but I think once we bring awareness to the fact that we are living in a one of one piece, you know, we're living in a one of one that will never be replicated ever again in the history of time, and we're just going to like neglect things about our bodies and brains which could cause permanent damage. And I'm not saying we have to be perfect robots, we really don't, but if you had a one of one Rolls Royce or Ferrari or a one of one art piece by Mozart, you wouldn't just chuck it on the sofa or park it on,
phone at the gym.
Exactly. You would treat it with the respect that the uniqueness of the item requires or demands, I would say. And we forget to do that for ourselves, don't we? And we're actually quicker to do it for other people than we are for ourselves.
It's also, I think, a good analogy to sum that up is you effectively become like your iPhone is. When you've got that thing brand new, you get a lovely case for it and you treat it like gold. But it becomes, you get used to it, and then it becomes when you're in the gym, you sort of just kick it on the floor. And that's kind of how I feel what happens to us is you sort of, maybe you start boozing at 18, particularly in England. Damn English culture. And it becomes fine to be
18 was try 16, 15.
God, 12. And you just get used to being not really, it's like the hangover on a Saturday is normal. That's not right.
I was just about
Our
to say,
pastime should be, I've been saying to Vivo as well, is why don't we make a Saturday, instead of going out and getting pissed, let's go and do an activity. Let's go and do something on the line bike around London. But English culture, well, I can't blame culture entirely. We enjoy doing this piss up mentality. I mean, going on holiday, for example, I went to Bali recently. Normally a holiday, I'm used to, right, let's go and get smashed, let's go to the bars. And this one I was like, no. There are waterfalls, there are these amazing places, yoga. And when you start to sort of accept that actually these things are way more fun, well, 50-50. But you know what I mean?
Isn't it peculiar how that is an anomaly? Like that, what you just described there, going to somewhere like Bali, which is so steeped in natural beauty and all the rest of it, and you've chosen to live that holiday out slightly differently. Yeah, you're like the odd one out. Yeah, you know, and I think it's a culture thing. I think the UK in particular, it's like, or England, it's like one of the only countries in the world where if you've got like a family of four, and they go to the pub for dinner, right? And the dad gets absolutely blathered, and he's had 10 pints, and they stumble out of the pub and they go home. Nobody would say a word. That's pretty normalised. But if the dad sat there and got a blackcurrant and soda, people would say, "Is he all right? He's on blackcurrant and soda."
What's that about?
Maybe it's friendly, but are you not drinking? What's wrong?
That's really interesting.
And it's like we live in a culture where like it's actually so much more normal to get blind drunk with your family and kids than it is to sit there and not drink. When you said, I don't know if it's culture, I think it could be culture.
I think it's English.
It could be a cultural thing, because I don't know why one is more normalised than the other.
I think you're right. It'd be interesting to compare the different cultures. Like I know America. A good one to think of now is it is changing. So when I was sort of 16 to 18, any excuse to get pissed, you were like, "Yeah, come on," or "Yeah, come on, boys," and you'd get absolutely blotted. But now they're all vaping, but the drinking culture's really gone down. It's the stats are showing that people who are 16 to 21 are not really drinking, and it's not fashionable to do that. So maybe there is a...
If I can interject, when you talk about culture, in South Africa, you never drink with your parents.
Oh, really?
At all.
And do you think that contributes to more drinking out with friends 100%, secretly?
100%, because what happens is that you rebel and everything is done in secrecy. Because the parent-child divide is so different compared to westernized countries.
That's interesting, because I think in certain countries in Europe where drinking from the age of like 10 and 12 with your family, Spain, a glass of wine and dinner is so much more normalised, you see reduced rates of alcoholism in those nations.
100%. I can agree, because South Africa there is a gigantic alcoholism issue. Massive.
When did you guys start boozing?
Well, I mean, I'm different to the...
9.
I've been on it for a while. But I mean, generally people start drinking at about 17.
Wow.
17, 18. Which is finish pretty late, but I could normally, like, I think in England it's a lot younger than
England's 16, 18, you sort of start drinking.
But also, like, the thing with drinking with the parents, that's just like, it just doesn't happen.
Interesting.
Yeah, not 2 cents.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting actually, because it would be interesting to look at like Chinese culture, Balinese culture, and things like that. But yeah, to wrap it up, what's next for you? Obviously, the mental health and training is going brilliantly. Where can people find you? We'll do some.
Oh yeah, if you want to put something on the screen, maybe. You can find my Instagram. It's Danny Williams, so ITS, then Danny Williams. Danny Williams is just taken, so I put it's Danny Williams, make it a bit easier.
Great.
Or you can find me on my website, which is just coachingbydw.com.
Perfect. Amazing. So what is next for you?
So, as I was saying to you before we started this conversation, I think the last sort of 5-6 years or so, I've had plates here, there and everywhere. I'm trying to spin loads of plates. It's been a bit exhausting. And the last sort of 12 months, I've really tried to simplify my life and put some of these plates down. And I'm not going to be ungrateful and dismissive. Like, I'm glad I had so many plates at one point.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now my focus really is on making my business as good as possible, and try and bring as much value to my audience as possible as well. I think for the first year or 2 years of having an audience, I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what my message was. I didn't know what my direction was. And now I've figured that out. I'm so passionate about making it as valuable as possible, because I think social media can be such a brilliant place, but it can be such a toxic place as well. And I think the vast majority of content I consume, it can be engaging, but it doesn't mean it's valuable. I see a lot of engaging content, a lot of triggering content, a lot of polarizing content.
It's the toilet scrolling content, isn't it?
But how much of it is actually valuable to me? Like, I don't know how much. And for me, one of my biggest goals right now is to make my content as valuable as possible, so people can see like, oh, I follow Danny Williams because he does X, Y, and Z, and I like that.
Look forward to that next post.
You know, and I say what's next for me is just upping the value for my audience.
Amazing, and you can definitely see that in your Instagram. It's like when I was doing my research, I was engrossed in your posts. Like, you had some really useful tips, interesting stuff, the analogies.
You know, I wrestled with it for a lot. Sorry to interrupt you.
No.
This is what it's about. I wrestled with it for so long because typically the kind of content I post now isn't as engaging as the content I used to post at all. And it's that balance between, like, do I want to do stuff for engagement and likes and people to talk about it, or am I actually just mission driven and my overarching goal is value, therefore I don't care about engagement. And I'm trying to find a balance between, like, getting the right people to see my stuff, but also making sure I don't lose sight of the mission. And I think I'm trying to find that balance. I'm still working on it.
It's going to be fun finding it though, particularly as I knew this is something you're really passionate about. One thing I just want to touch on there, have you ever experienced burnout? Do you know what I mean when I say?
I do.
Yeah.
It's a word that I don't love the word burnout, because I think it means something different to everybody.
It's very versatile.
I think it's commonly misused.
Absolutely.
I don't think I've personally experienced what we would know as burnout. What I have experienced is reaching a point where I think my output is reduced because I've pushed myself to my limit, probably too much, but not to the point where I've burnt out. To the point where I start to see my output isn't as good as it could be, and I might be snappy to the wrong person, or I might just sit there scrolling, or, like, you know, my boundaries are non-negotiables.
That's a very good one, yeah.
And I'm like, right, why is this happening? And before I reach burnout, I know what I need to do. I might need a day off. I might need to see my dad and spend the day with him. I might need to spend a day with my girlfriend and go on a date or something like that, and I just reset. But I think really burnout as a separate issue is something that not as many people experience as we like to believe. I think it's a separate thing. It's, I think, a bit further than I would say I've experienced.
I think that's spot on, mate. I think, and it shows your introspection is spot on to be able to identify when you're at that point. I think I
can feel it coming. I think you'd be able to feel it coming, right?
Yeah. You dismiss it sometimes.
I feel it in my physical body. It's not a mental thing. Like, I feel like my chest is tight. Sometimes I find it harder to breathe.
So the scrolling thing you said is true. I find I scroll more before bed.
Which
I
is
scroll way more.
It's just a sign that you're trying to escape something, right?
Absolutely.
If you're seeking escapism, ask yourself, what am I trying to escape from? What's going on?
Where was I going to go with that? Because I think burnout, I have experienced it when I was building Ping, but I was also taking something called modafinil, which is given to shift workers. It's like Ritalin, these study drugs, but I wouldn't say I probably was abusing it. It was sort of a daily thing, and it would keep you from 6 a.m. all the way through till sort of 11, completely razor focused, which is what we found from Andrew Huberman's research is actually you can really only do about 3 90-minute blocks, and when he says that, he means like when you're in the flow state, you can do 3 90-minute blocks, maybe 4, but that is it. Your brain is not okay, and you have to have rest in between, whereby your focus comes away from this one area and your brain is able to sort of get more light in.
Wow.
So that
was it his research? Was it his research which made you stop taking it, or did you experience some kind of negative?
It was the burnout that made me stop taking it, because I was so hell bent on being successful with ping culture that I just would code. I think around the time I was also doing Mac's app as well as Jake's website. So I took on way too much, as you say, spinning too many plates, which is what reminded me. And I think there's always you need to have introspection to be able to go, right, time for a change, which is clearly what.
And as well, just to I want to highlight as well, there's a nuance to this whole like hustle, work culture, work-life balance thing, and I think it's easy for people like me and you who are building businesses to sit on a podcast and say retrospectively, I shouldn't have worked so hard and I wish I didn't. But I think there is an element of pushing your boundaries as well when you're trying to do something outside the box. You're trying to build something different.
Absolutely.
There is an element of it's going to be hard. There will be late nights and early starts and things like that. And I think I want to just highlight that, because I think it's easy to be idealistic, but the reality of it is no one's going to build a business for you, and there's a certain element of it might take 6 months or 12 months of pushing yourself, and it might not be ideal, but it's a case of as long as it doesn't reach a point where your health is at risk. Of course, we don't want to go there. But I just see a lot of people on podcasts, especially recently, they jump on and be like, oh, I built a 7-figure business, but if I could go back, I would have slept 8 hours a day and I would have gone for walks, and which is great. You
wouldn't
built a
have
business,
had your 7-figure business.
Exactly. And I think it's just reminding people that it is a nuanced thing, and it's not as easy as just we can sit here and be idealistic about it.
That's really refreshing. I think I love hearing that, because I think it's so important. I was listening to Chris Williamson in Modern Wisdom before he's
love his stuff.
So good, just because, and he's very, very good at giving both perspectives. And again, I'm going to screw up whatever quote it was, but he was saying you can really win, well, not win an argument, but win a debate when you are able to also bat the other side with solid reasoning, because you fully understand the whole picture. And I was like, that is so spot on. And I think it comes down to put yourself in someone else's shoes before you fight back.
And I think as well, a lot of people will engage in debate and argument with the intention of winning the argument. But I think if your intention is to seek the truth or the right solution, then you have no problem in fighting someone else's corner. So you're trying to get to the bottom of the issue, not just the argument.
Yes. Oh, we've discussed this so much.
These discussions are like,
I knew we were going to have these.
We always discuss this shit.
I think it was very clear from when because I think ages ago I was like, Danny, we need to get you on. And something that happens with all you'll have sort of mates who you see once every 3 years or something. Everyone who's now in my circle, or I'm in their circle, are busy as hell. So, and I find it's very easy for Londoners particularly to be like, oh, he doesn't go and make the effort. It's like, well, actually, do you ever? And when you realise everyone's got their own shit going on, and if you just forget the fact that they might not have reached out to you, you reach out to them. Often, miracles happen and you have the best things ever. So it's really refreshing to have that. I'm going to wrap up there. Thank you so much, mate. That was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. That was wicked.
So good.
Woo!
So good.
Let's go get drunk. No, I'm joking.